Ave Regina, Mater misericordiae, vita dulcedo, estes nostra salve.
The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Jesus said to his disciples, "Be sure of this. If the master of the house had known the hour when the thief was coming, he would not have let his house be broken into. You also must be prepared, for at an hour you do not expect the Son of Man will come." Then Peter said, "Lord, is this parable meant for us or for everyone?" And the Lord replied, "Who then is the faithful and prudent steward, whom the master will put in charge of his servants to distribute the food allowance at the proper time? Blessed is that servant whom his master on arrival finds doing so. Truly I say to you, he will put him in charge of all his property. But if that servant says to himself, 'My master is delayed in coming,' and begins to beat the maidservants and the menservants, to eat and to drink and get drunk, then that servant's master will come on an unexpected day at an unknown hour, and punish the servants severely, and assign him a place with the unfaithful. That servant who knew the master's will but did not make preparations nor act in accordance with his will shall be beaten severely. And the servant who was ignorant of his master's will but acted in a way deserving of a severe beating shall be beaten only lightly. Much will be required for the person entrusted with much, and still more will be demanded of the person entrusted with more." The Gospel of the Lord. Yesterday, somebody pointed out to me a Catholic webpage that was advertising their display of coffee mugs. And one of the coffee mugs was inscribed with this phrase: "Sin makes you stupid." And let's think about Adam and Eve for a minute. God gave them a beautiful place in paradise. And all they had to do is follow Daddy's instructions. And everything would go well for them because God is so loving and generous. But they decided to sin. They decided to disregard the sense of order that was necessary to maintain that garden and to maintain their lives. They sinned. And everything changed. And because of this sin, it has affected all of us. And the fruits of that sin is there's two major things that happened. What we call a darkening of the mind. In other words, they weren't able to see clearly anymore what was right and what was wrong, what is truthful and real and what is false. They lost their ability to reason in that stuff, in what it is to be following God's provisions for our betterment, our health, and our eternal life. They also lost touch with the earth. And so it became a place of toil for them. And their souls were darkened because they were tainted. Without all this knowledge now, they became stupid because they walked away from God who wanted to supply them with all wisdom. And so in sin, St. Paul tells us, you're a slave of the one you obey. If we're going to obey our sinful inclinations, we're going to end up in addictions. And addictions that can greet us on the World Wide Web with certain apps. The media is prolific with this stuff. And so we become enslaved and we become filled with a propensity for disobedience. I would rather do this which makes me feel good, even though it will make me mentally disturbed in the long run. And indeed, addictions, especially, for example, the addiction of pornography, is a mental disturbance. And we have to be careful the way we allow ourselves to be influenced by that. We must be very cautious. You are the slave of the one you obey. Sin leads us to death. In the same way it led Adam and Eve to death. They were supposed to be eternal, immortal, and they lost that. In baptism, we regain this because we make ourselves bonded to Jesus and he to us. And perhaps on the road to doing that, we may take detours here and there, but he's always interested in inviting us to turn back to him and find new life and new truth in him and his righteousness. Obedience leads to life, and disobedience and sin, it doesn't just make you stupid, it makes you stupid for eternity. And so St. Luke reminds us in this parable, you must be prepared for an hour that you do not expect the Son of Man to come. In other words, Jesus is always waiting, and we need to put ourselves in a posture of waiting for him, not the other guy who seduced Adam and Eve as a snake, but always waiting for him. And so we come here to Mass, and we wait for him, so that in grace he penetrates our very being, our soul, and makes us more attracted to the good and the beautiful than the evil. And the question then comes that we don't necessarily know the time when all this will come to face us. And so we're always in the ready, in the now. And so I leave the question this morning with us. Whom do you serve? Do you serve the stupidity of sin? Or do you serve the wisdom of the obedience to God's plan to bring us into everlasting life?
Regina Celi, letare, alleluia, qui aquam merum isti portare, alleluia, resurrexit sicut dixit, alleluia, ora pro nobis Deum, alleluia.